So as we continue to move into visual displays, we're going to continue with the frequency polygon involving question number eight this time. So as we mentioned again, receipts versus outlays in economics. Receipts again are money coming in. So that represents income, revenue, or funds received by a person, business, or government. So a lot of times in our government, a lot of their income comes from what we call taxes. But of course, there's other revenue streams as well, but that's one of their biggest ones is using a tax base to help pay their bills. So as we said, business receiving money from selling goods, like I said, government collecting taxes, interest or dividends earned, that's a big part of what we try to do, especially you know, you know, as an individual, you know, uh, our money can make money if it's invested wisely. So those are what we call the inflows, money coming in. Outlays is the money that's going out. They represent expenses, payments, or spending by a person, business, or government. Those are the outflows. So in short, receipts is the money you're receiving, and outlays is the money you're spending. So hopefully your receipts add to your financial resources, outlays reduce them. So your goal is if you're trying to balance the budget, you're wanting the money coming in to match the money going out. But also, like I know our colleges, they also want to have enough money coming in that we can deal with the unexpected uh, outlays, if you will, that they may come up. So it's always good to prepare for a rainy day. So a lot of times in your receipts, you want to kind of be like a squirrel and kind of put some back for later. So in question eight, we're given a graphic like this. So the graph shows government receipts and outlays, both on budget and off budget. This is from 1991 to 2001. So this is pretty old material here. So plot a point for each year and draw a line graph showing the federal surplus or deficit over the years. So now they've already actually generated the graphs for us. One thing to pick up on is this horizontal line here represents the break-even point. So if we're below this line, that's a deficit. If we're above this line, it's a surplus. So if we look at 91, notice how our receipts are in blue and our outlays are in red. So notice how our receipts are slightly above. So that means we have a surplus. It looks like our surplus is right around $400 or so. So notice how this one is above. That's good. Notice how that first point's below and this first point's below. So right off the bat, the only one that really even matches is this first one. Notice that in 1992, our receipts are now a little bit under our receipts. So notice how that is now a deficit. So notice how this kind of mirrors that we're now below the line. So notice how this graph here, we're only above the break-even spot here. Everywhere else, we're below the break-even line. So notice how this tracks below, but notice how about here, around 1997, notice that our receipts are almost matching the outgoing. It looks like, again, that's about maybe 200. So it's really like $200 billion, if you will, though, since this is in billions. So, not $200 per se, but 200 billion. So I forgot to add that billion on there. So not as close to balancing as possible. So way off when you talk about in those terms. So notice how this is kind of subtracting these two, and it's a surplus if the receipts are more than the overlay, if you will, the outlays. That would be considered a surplus. But notice how everywhere else we're in a deficit. And if you follow governments, that's kind of where we are most of the time. So I think we've only balanced the budget maybe 1 year, maybe 2 years at most, um, in the since the 20th century or so. Again, you can do some research on that about federal budgets, if you will, how well how that functions. So I'll stop there, but notice how this first graph kind of mirrors this. So this line here that's kind of across here represents if you're above that line, you're in a surplus. If you're below that line, that's a deficit. And this is the only place where the receipts is above the outlays. So that's the only place we have a surplus. And this is the only graph that's showing that. So that would be our choice there is this first choice. So if it may be like A would be your first choice there.